Hello and welcome to Fork in the Road. My name is Rusty Gaylord. I am your host. Fork in the Road is a conversation with interesting business leaders who had a fork in the road, a change in their direction that brought them to where they are today. And then we get to dig into their experience and also talk about leadership and some of the things that they have learned along the path. So I'm very happy to have today Andrea Hall. Andrea spent 24 years as an executive at Stonewall Kitchen and left recently to join as the Chief Operating Officer of New View Strategies, which is a consulting firm helping you love your ERP system. So that might be something to talk more about. Anyway, I'm super happy to have Andrea with us today. Welcome.
Thanks, Rusty. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's jump in with a fork in the road from your journey, which was a health scare that you had not long ago that was part of the reason for your change in direction. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that story.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a big deal. So I'll back up and lay the scene before that happened.
Yeah.
So, hard charging, working, trying to achieve everything I can. Again, was just completely dedicated to my job and my company. And some of that comes from my roots. My mom and dad owned their own business, and we grew up working in the greenhouse and playing in the weekends, and life and work sort of didn't have a big distinction between them. It was all pretty fun, and my family did it together. So I grew up working, and my path sort of just took off where I had lost track of any differentiation between work and life. Work became my life and really became so immersed in it. And, was one of those people who I can do it, I can do it. And I kept getting more to do, that I had an awful lot on my plate. And, friends around me were making suggestions. And I was like, you don't understand. That's not how it works. Like, must keep going. And I really just wasn't listening to anyone, and just trying to keep all the plates spinning and keep the boat afloat. But what happened about a year and a half ago is I was wrapping up my work for the day, and started not really being able to see correctly and not really being able to talk correctly, and went to the hospital. And it was believed at the time that I was having a mini stroke, a TIA, and was admitted. And for about a month, that's what we thought had happened. And so my take on that situation was that was a higher power in the universe saying, you're not listening, Andrea, here's the call for you to listen and really kind of check in with yourself. So I didn't work for 2 months as we were figuring this all out. And that helped me reevaluate where I was at in life, and what I was doing and how I was doing it.
So I'm glad you're healthy. First of all, that sounds terrifying. When you say in those 2 months you reevaluated what you were doing, like what did you figure out, or what did you learn, or what insights,
Yeah.
what came to you during that time?
Yeah, I think it was a two-step process. So, I was released from the hospital, and I woke up the next morning and got on my computer and started having meetings. And again, people around me were like, I don't think that's how this is supposed to work. So I took some time to just exist. And by my life being so quiet, I really, for the first time in a long, long time, realized, had some perspective on how I was living my life and how much I was working. And I couldn't see it before. So I realized I really got perspective on how overly immersed I was. So I started, wow, this is shocking. It really was truly shocking. I realized that, I was working in a way that I truly thought my life depended on me working as hard as I could. In fact, it was potentially the opposite situation. So for those 2 months, I really tried to separate myself from my work. Who am I? If I'm not my work, who am I?
But can I just ask though, how, I don't know, like so many of us identify so closely with our work, and this idea that you get out of the hospital and the first day you get back on your computer. I mean, I chuckled when you said that, and yet I can relate to that. Right. And I think a lot of people listening can relate to that idea that you get back to work because that's what I do. So how did you, was it hard even to separate yourself from that? Like how did you get the willpower to say, I'm not going to work? And what did you do with yourself?
Yeah, it was really quite remarkable. It was oddly difficult because I had been on autopilot so completely for so long. So that was challenging. At the same time, this was such a big deal in my life, and I had people close to me reiterating, "This is a very big deal." You know, for a while, I was still like, "Did that even happen?" And they're like, "Yes." So I had good support holding up a mirror to say, "This is really happening." And
Mhm.
so I really focused on being quiet and being still. And in that period of time, it made me wonder not only who am I if I'm not my work, but where does my value come from? If I'm not at work producing, am I no longer valuable? You know, I really worked on this for quite a while, and I finally, for the first time, realized that my skills, my knowledge, my experience go with me anywhere I go. And even if I'm not practicing them, I still have them. So if, you know, next year I go on vacation, I'm sitting on the beach, I'm no less valuable. I still know how to organize things and coordinate things and make them happen. Just because you're not exercising your skills and the way that you've defined your value doesn't mean that they're not still who you are and a part of you. So I realized I contained my value rather than the outer exterior or the shell or my output
Mm.
was my value.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is so challenging for so many of us. It's like if I'm not producing, where's my value? And that
Mhm.
transition you described is so valuable. Well, there I go, using that word, valuable, powerful one. I'm thinking about something that one of my coaches challenged me to do, which is like a micro version of what you described, right? I mean, you went through a health scare and, by necessity, took some time away from work. This challenge was just take 10 minutes a day and sit down on the couch and do nothing. Don't read a
Mhm.
book. Don't check your email. Don't meditate. Don't do anything. Just sit
Mhm.
there. And I was like, are you kidding me? What am I going to do just sitting there for 10 minutes? And so I imagine there was some part of that for you that you were in that churn of,
Mhm.
I mean, you described now you're on the other side, but while you're in it, it's uncomfortable to sit there and not be productive when that's what you've
Mhm.
been your whole life.
Absolutely, and it's Tony Robbins who's the person I first heard say, "We're human beings, not human doings."
Yeah.
You know, so I tried to be, I started a meditation practice. Like I didn't have it within me to sit still. So what tools can I employ?
Mhm.
Going for walks, you know, just different things to be in nature, move my body and not be able to touch the keyboard, not sit and work in the way that I had done before.
Yeah.
And it was through this period of time that I realized I had a choice. It just absolutely never occurred to me. Again, I was on autopilot. Making a change just wasn't even in my universe of thinking. And so I realized, wow, I have a choice. I may choose to do the exact same thing I was doing before, but it is a choice. And
Mhm.
that rounded out sort of those 2 months of realizing who am I? I have value in myself no matter what I'm doing, and that I have a choice of how I spend my day and what I contribute my energy towards.
Yeah, when you say that, I think about so many people I talk to, they're like, "Well, I have to work tonight," or "I have to go to this meeting," or "I have to do this." And it's just even in the language we use,
Mhm.
right? I have
Mhm.
to do this as opposed to owning that choice. I'm choosing to do this. I'm choosing to work more tonight. I'm
Mhm.
choosing to go to this meeting. I'm choosing to make this business trip. Whatever it is. That switch in thinking, which then goes with the switch in language, is so powerful because it gives you the choice
Mhm.
back. It takes you off of autopilot and gives you the opportunity to say, what actually is in my best interest?
Yeah, I had completely even given up being responsible for myself. I
Mm,
just showed up and did what I was supposed to do. Like I wasn't saying, is this what I want to do? Is this what I should be doing to take care of myself? So in realizing that I had a choice, I actually made a huge what was a huge decision for me is I did return to work, but I said I'm not going to do it the way that I was doing it. In fact, I don't even want the position I had before. Can we come up with something different? Because I just realized that that was no longer a fit for me. And I was very fortunate and we did come up with a creative position, but I felt empowered and
yeah.
strong because of that.
So let's talk for a minute about success because um, One person could say, okay, well, you went back to work and you took a different job. So you may
Mhm.
have slowed down, you may have changed your perspective, you may have separated your identity from your work, but you're less successful as a result. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, and it's almost a game that I've had to do to trick myself because I want to be successful.
Mhm,
I am driven to be a successful person. So my trick is I had to change the definition of what successful was.
mhm.
So before, say you have 10 slots in your life, nine and a quarter slots were filled with work. And the people I love fell in that last little bit. And I changed my definition. That is not successful to me anymore. Successful is having about 17 different things fit in 10 slots because variety makes me feel good. And now that's now part of my definition of success. Helping others, not just the work side of things, but helping and contributing to others opportunities, lessons, success. That makes me successful. So I've had to change the definition because I don't want to, and I haven't figured out how to curb the drive to be successful.
Yeah.
So I changed the terms.
Yeah. So I'd love to thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to kind of dig into the variety piece for a minute because you
Mm.
mentioned variety, 17 different things into 10 slots. How do I fit it in? I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of us have that. And so many people are like, yeah, but I have to devote 9.5 of those slots to work. And so the other
Mhm.
16 items jam in that other half a slot. Um, and yet you also talk about variety and how variety is
Mhm.
important. I'm of the belief that variety is important, not just for us as human beings and our livelihood and well-being, but it also makes us more effective in the time that we devote to work. So you may have gone from 9.75 of your slots devoted to work down to whatever, 5 or 6 or 7,
Mhm.
whatever the number is. Um, I'm wondering if you felt like you were less effective because you were putting less of your time and energy into work.
If I'm now less effective
Yeah.
because I put less into.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I do not feel that way because, and I know I'd heard a million people say it, and I was like, "But you just don't get it." But I was the one that didn't get it. I am so much more effective because I come to work with energy and happiness and relaxation and stimulation. I went for a walk and all these ideas popped into my head. If I'd been grinding away, that wouldn't have happened.
Mhm.
Part of the variety is laughing. My wife and I have laughed more in the last handful of months than we have in the last handful of years. I know that gives, more spring in my step. So when I show up to do anything, including work, I'm the best version of myself. I'm creative. I have energy. I'm interested. I have everything to give in that moment because I haven't drained everything away previously.
Yeah. I'm with you 100%. I love the way you just said that. So all I can say is yay. And I'm glad that you've
Mm.
brought laughter back into your life. What a beautiful thing. Um, so, we've talked about one of the themes that's coming up in this conversation is this idea of overworking, right? Is like putting
Mhm.
so much focus there, identity, believing that you're only as good as what you've produced at work, and therefore work takes up a larger and larger slice of your life. One of the things we've talked about in the past, I don't think it's come up yet in this conversation, is passion, and how passion
Mm.
can actually fuel that desire to work. It can fuel that energy and that commitment to putting work as a bigger and bigger part of your life. And I'm
Mhm.
interested to hear you talk about your experience of that and how you think about it now that you've got this different perspective.
Yeah, and I'm very blessed to have positive energy and passion, and I love all of that. And I now see that I sort of had my head in the corner, and I was just driving everything into this not dead end, but just a hard position. And so I now it just speaks to variety. I can put passion into it. Like, it would take me a year to read a book. I read a book every week and a half now. And the stories and the lessons, and I'm just getting so much more it's just feeding that internal energy, that spark that I have. So I'm finding again more passion and more things.
Mm.
And I just can't believe the life that I get to have now. And really, part of it was realizing how many assumptions I was making. I was making these just crazy false assumptions, like, I could never work anywhere else. No one else would ever wanna have me work with them. Like, I can't even do anything else. I had just gotten down this rabbit hole of just such feeling like concrete assumptions instead of saying, "I wonder what's possible. I wonder if that could come to happen. I wonder if I should try my hand at that." And I just sort of got out of this blind spot and
Yeah.
turned around, and I didn't realize all of this was open behind me this whole time. So I realized how much the responsibility is mine for what I make of my life and how I spend my time.
Yeah, I want to go back to that have to choose to idea. I
Mhm.
mean, one of the things I was thinking about when I was working at Apple and contemplating leaving to start my own business was this idea that I could have more time to be outside. I love being outside in the middle of the day and just go out in the sun or go for a walk, something, even like to mow the grass. I'm happy mowing the grass because I'm outside. And then I started my own business and I was never outside. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's not, I can't like, it was always blaming the company or blaming the job. It's like, well, see, I have this job and I have to show up at work. I have to be in
Mhm.
the office. I have to do this and that and the other thing. And then all of a sudden I have no boss and I'm still doing all the same things. Like, oh, there's no one else to blame anymore. I see now that it's me. It's my choice and what I'm choosing to do. And that realization was uncomfortable. But as you said, it just opens up this whole perspective of, wow, look what I can do when I actually
Mhm.
own responsibility for my choices and what I want.
Yeah, it became mind changing for me. You know, the possibility that I can choose whatever I'm doing. Because, even when I was contemplating leaving my prior position, my loved ones around me would say, "But what's going to be different with the next company you go? So what you
Yeah.
experience."
Nothing.
And and so I worked hard. So for anyone listening, I worked really hard at this. This didn't happen by accident, or else it would have happened, 10 times by now. But I really dug in. I dedicated time each day to think and feel and wonder and imagine. And I'm at a point now where it feels so incredible. You can never stuff me back in that box. I just won't allow it to happen. In fact, there was a particular week during this evolution where I was like, "Uh-oh." I almost physically felt something break inside me.
Hmm.
And I thought, "Oh, now I've done it. I've really broken myself. Like, what am I doing?" And what I really visualized was happening is it broke, but it was something that was binding me.
Hmm.
And I have been freed from that old way of thinking and that old way of living and working, and that can never be tied around me again.
Yeah, that's a powerful, powerful image. I want to come back to this idea that that kind of personal freedom you're describing, right? The
Mhm,
ability to be free, to be creative, to bring the best of yourself, to have a diverse life, to not be just focused on work all the time, does not mean you're less effective at work. Because
mhm,
I just think so many people were like, oh yeah, that would be great. I'll do that once I retire, or I do that once I hit my financial target, whatever that might be.
mhm.
I'll do that when I've achieved X, Y, and Z. But I don't think they understand that by doing this, you can be more effective in your work and you're more likely to hit your targets, whatever they are.
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the energy and the ideas are so much more free flowing
Yeah.
as opposed to bogged down with, you know, 87 things on my mind. I show up to a conversation and we're talking about three things. And I really can think about those three things and
Mhm.
we can imagine what's next and what are the things it'll take to get there. And less is more.
Yeah. So if you rewind to your time when you were in the thick of it, right? In jammed into the corner as you described, and you were thinking about other people around you on the team, and you were thinking about, who gets promoted, who gets the next opportunity, how do people what were you looking for at that point in terms of other people and what would make them successful and help them move up the ranks? And has that shifted based on where the way your outlook today?
It definitely has shifted. So what I was looking for then was, the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question was I was looking for someone who could keep up.
Mhm.
I was just immersed in a culture that I helped propagate
Yeah.
of we go hard and we go fast. And we're looking for people who can get on this bus and stick with us and go the distance.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot about being a leader as well because I contributed to this environment for people around me as well.
Mhm.
And we all are responsible. And, I honestly think there's people who could work something similar to I was working and it wouldn't impact them the same way as it did me. And there were great things about it, but there were really sort of things that were bogging down my life, for sure. But I created an environment where it was like, go hard, go big, go strong. We're doing this. And I love being able to overcome obstacles and win and all these kinds of things. But it was almost for me personally at all costs.
Yeah.
And as a leader, sorry, just to expand upon that, as a leader, I realized I looked back on a situation where there was a team of us and we were just really giving our whole lives to this particular project. And someone on the team said, tomorrow I'm leaving at 5. I'm having dinner with my family. And there was a conversation near me that said, oh, he can't hack it. And I let it happen. And if
Mm.
it were me today, I would say, wait a minute, that's a great wake up call. Every single one of us pick your day of the week. And that's the day you're going to leave on Monday at 5 to have dinner with your family. You get Tuesday, you get Wednesday, you get Thursday. So I've learned that as much as we all own it, I can help support people in that if that's important to them now.
Yeah. I love that because, so many people talk about psychologically safe workforce and certain
Mhm.
workplace. And certainly there's something about the environment and the culture of a
Mhm.
place. And there's also something about the person who has the courage to stand up and say, I'm leaving at 5 to go have lunch with, or
Mhm.
dinner with my family.
Yeah.
Um, I really don't think it's one way. I think it requires both. Um, but I'm curious, like, for you to get here, you had to step out of work for a period of time.
Mhm.
Uh, do you think that's required? Or do you think you can get there while you're in the midst of it?
That is actually something I've thought about because I truly believe that that moment was a gift for me, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to imagine if that hadn't happened, what could I have done? And so I'm trying to formulate my advice to someone else, and I think that it's along the lines of the recommendation that you said you were given is to find 10 minutes a day. I think my version of it, and I already can hear the objections that I would have had. I think my recommendation is take at least a weekend. A week probably better, but take a weekend. And I would have said, "Oh, I couldn't possibly stop. I can't step out of it for 3 days. Like it just needs me to keep going." Find a small window of a few days where you can 100% step out of whatever your reality is right now. Perhaps not necessarily even spend it with your family. Go find quiet time so that you can finally have a sense of something different from what
Mhm.
you're immersed in now and see if it doesn't start saying, "Oh, wait a minute. There is something else that I'm not seeing." Because I people would say stuff all the time and I was like, "You don't get it." And
Mhm.
I didn't get it. So I had to get a window where you can step out of it, where you can start to notice that there is something different than what you're living every day.
Yeah. The idea, I mean, that I talk about that as an experiment. You have to be willing to do an experiment, whether it's a
Mhm,
weekend, a day, a week, even
mhm,
an hour in the middle of the day. I'm going to take a lunch break today, right? I mean, however that experiment
yeah,
looks for you, you have to be willing to do it. And you have to be willing to tolerate the discomfort of doing it because it's uncomfortable, as you described, right?
mhm.
Like as you're saying it, you can hear the objection.
Yeah,
Get it. I get it. Andrea, this is so great. I just so appreciate you sharing your experience and just your different outlook, right? To go from a place where you were just working so hard, you would put yourself in this kind of corner position of that's as big as life was. And now understanding that you can be more effective and more productive and have a bigger impact at work, even as work takes up the smaller portion of your life. I mean, that's just such a powerful story. So thank you for being with us and thank you for sharing your story.
absolutely. Thank you very